are live. How's it going, all you beautiful people? It's your boy Wardy, and we're back at it with our first edition of Mets Free Agent Frenzy live show here on WardyNYM this MLB offseason. Of course, we've already done a plethora of live streams on all the latest news and rumors, and this isn't going to deviate too much from that. However, what I really want to emphasize in tonight's show is breaking down all the reported, rumored, and scouted free agent targets for the New York Mets, deep diving every single one of them, going through it with the live chat, as well as all the Mets trade targets. Again, reported, rumored, and getting into a little tidbit of players that Jerry Blevins discussed tonight on MLB Hot Stove. We have played a deep dive on all the latest regarding the New York Metropolitans. We're your number one source for all your info, all your needs, and then some here on WardyNYM. And I'm so beyond humbled and grateful to be in the position I am every single day, thanks to all you amazing followers out there. So we have a lot to get into. I'm not going to really beat around it too much more. I want to shout out everyone first chiming in live and on replay. Please don't hesitate from smashing that like and subscribe button. It's greatly appreciated. Hope you guys enjoyed the little new intro too. Shout out my man Jacob for always shoving up something nice, and shout out my man Jordan Simpson, who's in the live show right now, because that was Jordan's version of Meet the Mets. He did that all himself, the music aspect. Jordan is not only unbelievably talented, but he is a fantastic follow. Make sure to check him out on Twitter, TikTok, or wherever you have your social media. But again, shout out all you guys. Happy to have you all in here. We got Reginald, we got Yoshima, we got Juan, Dominic, great members as always, Mike, Ariel, list goes on and on. Happy to have all you beauties in here. Like I said, we have plenty to get into, some key updates for the Mets as they're pursuing plenty pitching this MLB offseason, highlighted by Yamamoto, Jordan Montgomery, Soto, Imanaga, just to name a few from the free agent front. Trade market, we know plenty of those options as well that we will be deep diving. But again, tonight's show, the whole purpose is that we'll be going over all the latest in Mets land and kind of sharing my personal thoughts on these individual players, a more extended version aside from what I've discussed already on the channel, along with seeing your input and of course wanting to answer all your comments, questions, and concerns. So really looking forward to getting into this one. Again, happy to have you all in here. What do you want to say? What's up? Have a great show. Thank you so much, Matt. Guys, please make sure to subscribe to Matt's channel. Him and John do a fantastic job on the Till Mets Do Us Part podcast. They do really good job. They will be live tomorrow as well, before I'll be live, planning to go live again tomorrow with my good friend Michael Marino, who I referenced today as the source for the Jordan Montgomery connection. Michael's going to come on tomorrow night's show, probably around the same time or so, and share further thoughts on Monty, not Yoshida, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and plenty other topics regarding the New York Metropolitans. But Matt, shout out to you, my man. Please make sure to check him out. Check out the podcast Until Mets Do Us Part, wherever you get your podcast. Chris, member for 16 months, my man. So happy to have you in here. Thank you so much for the support. Says, what's up, buddy? Saw something about Hector Gomez saying Mets heavy into trade talks for Soto. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say heavy, but the Mets are involved, according to Hector Gomez, that we referenced in yesterday's video. Highly implore you to check that one out in case you haven't already. But we'll discuss at further length that report and my thoughts on it, along with all the other latest updates regarding this team in Queens. Why don't we trade for someone like Shane Bieber? I wouldn't say it's impossible, but there's a reason why we haven't really heard much on the Bieber market and the Mets connection. And Shane's someone that is not going to be an easy cost should you land him. And that's something that the Mets need to very much keep in mind as they evaluate the trade market. The current teams reportedly in on Shane Bieber, I've heard trade talks with of recent over the past day or so, are in fact the Cincinnati Reds. They're a team to watch in the trade market, as they're definitely trying to add pitching, and love the idea of adding rentals as well, because, you know, if they're going to have to pay guys, they much rather pay them short term, and then we'll likely let them walk unless they reach a multi-year deal. And I will say this, they were in on Sonny Gray. They had interest in Aaron Nola. The Reds are willing to spend money this offseason, but we know it's only going to be to a certain degree, which is why they have to get creative in the trade route, as they tend to do year after year. What's up, Andrew? How you doing, my man? Happy to have you in here. You do a great job as well over there at Mets Weekly. Happy to have all you beauties in here. Jacob, you absolute stud. Rory, can you talk about the sign we made or supposed to make? Yes, I can do exactly that. Breaking news, folks. Right as the live show is about to get rolling, about to get started, we have found out the following. Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s brother, younger brother, and of course son of Vladdy Guerrero Sr. is expected to sign with the New York Metropolitans as an international free agent next year. And of course, in January, February, whenever they usually do the signings. I am planning to discuss this at further length as soon as tomorrow. Want to make sure I do my due diligence on the kid, because for obvious reasons, I'm not going out of my way to scout a kid that is 15, 16 years of age over there in the DR. You know, like, that's just a normal thing. I feel like the average individual isn't going out of their way to do exactly that. So have to do my homework, my due diligence on him, and I will expand on that further. But look, the Mets are going to have Ronald Acuna Jr.'s brother in the organization. Now they're going to get Vladdy's younger brother as well. I mean, that's exciting. Yes, of course, the name is awesome, but they have to be talented and they have to have production more than anything. But this is a big move that the Mets will be doing in the international scouting front next year. And shout out Michael Mayer of Mets and Rise for breaking that news just over the past 25 minutes at the time of recording this. And I'll tell you right now, I'm pretty sure I'm assuming he plays probably the same position as his brother, but let me get into this real quick. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know what position he plays, but given the looks of it, he definitely looks like a first baseman. He's big, he's stocky, left-hand bat as well, which is very appealing. Awesome. Actually, in love with that aspect of him. Love the fact that he's a lefty power bat. The kid's, you know, he's definitely got the pounds on him in a good way. He's muscular, he's stocky, he fits the Guerrero name absolutely between his father and his brother, who's been doing a great job over there in Toronto for the most part. And speaking of the Toronto Blue Jays, you know, we've heard rumblings because I think MLB Network came out with a proposed trade recently, which had to do with Vladdy and what was it? Not Vladdy and Bo. It was Vladdy and someone else for Alonso, and it was Vladdy and Manoah for like Alonso McNeil. And I'm like, you know what's fun about these trade propositions is because it's nothing more than a proposition. That is not going to happen whatsoever. It's just for the sake of stirring the pot and getting the conversation going. The same way that right now we're having this great discussion because, like I said, you see the laundry list there. Got it all color-coded, nice and easy for you. Breaking it down step by step. You know the Michael Scott meme that you'll see out of the plethora of memes from The Office, in case you guys are wondering, you know, explain it to me like I'm 5. This is me explaining to you like you're 5. And just in case you need it in simple terms, the reported targets to this point in the free agent market are in the yellow. The 2 that were just scouted because they were coming over from the MPB are, of course, in the green. And the rumored targets, guys, that could reportedly be targeted by the Mets in the coming days to weeks, but aren't officially reportedly connected yet, are there in that teal light blue. And then after we break down these free agent targets and all the updates on them, then we're going to push forward getting into the trade discussion, which is going to have us discussing all the following players that you see right here. So again, I'm going to start with the free agency, then I'm going to get into the trade market more, but Juan, Soto, Manuel, Margot, those are the reported connections. The rumored ones are the laundry list I have there for you. Again, focusing on big names. Of course, there are a bunch of relievers that we're going to be getting into as well, but I did make a note of Bednar, Crochet, and Williams, in which Jerry Blevins discussed tonight on SNYN, which I'll expand a little bit further on, because they all do make plenty of sense for the Mets if they can get them at a price where they're not giving up a complete arm and a leg for these guys. So with that being said, I want to again thank you all so much for chiming in as we're getting into everything on this New York metropolitan scene. But let's just start. Let's deep dive it. Luke Riley, how you doing, you absolute beauty? Comeback season. Happy to have you in here, my man. Again, please make sure to smash that like and subscribe button for anyone watching live on a replay. To my around 400 live concurrent viewers, greatly appreciate every single one of you. Please do not get it twisted. But let's start with the big one, right? Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Actually, before I do, I think I mentioned this already, but just once more for the people in the back, in case you're unaware. Michael Marino, who has done a phenomenal job as an independent reporter covering not only the Mets, but just baseball as a whole the past couple of years. Michael and I go all the way back to pretty much when I started YouTube. It wasn't long after. He actually slid in my DMs one day, and we started talking from there. Good friend of mine, and definitely has his sources, to say the least. And he has been on the money the past couple of years, including the latest report today saying that the Mets are not only interested in Jordan Montgomery, but they really like him. So we're going to hear those further thoughts from Michael tomorrow on the live show, which I'm very excited about. And another thing, guys, we're going to have content out pretty much every single day this week, and that'll likely be the case for the foreseeable future, aside from maybe a day or two off on the weekends. And actually, if things are colder and there isn't as many things to discuss, but aside from that, we're going to be very consistent here all off season long, so make sure you're hitting those buttons. But aside from Jordan Montgomery, which I have plenty more to say about, Yoshinobu Yamamoto has been the most fascinating player imaginable, and I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to say, hey, us Mets fans would like to see him on the team. Actually, by a raise of hands, and by hands I mean your emojis are going to drop. Give me a raise of hands. How many of you are interested and would love to see the Mets land Yoshinobu Yamamoto? Let me know in the live chat, comments, or replay down below. Same applies. We are not getting anyone that was rumored, in my opinion. That very well could be the case. You know, again, we talk about, I feel like, every single player and their mother every offseason, because inevitably when you're the New York Mets, it's a big market and their names thrown in there. Plenty of times it's because they actually have interest, and sometimes it's because they're being used for leverage. That's a reality with Steve Cohen. Of course, the guys we're discussing today, the Mets, if they're going to land any of them, it's going to be a select few, but it doesn't change the fact that we are going to be doing thorough breakdowns on these players, because the reality is if the Mets land any of them, you want to know who they are, you want to know what the potential is of them and their impact in Queens versus, the potential negative, the downsides, in which we will, of course, break those down too. Good to see you too, Bobby G. Happy to have you in here. Again, I think we're all in the same feeling and direction. Michael J, my man, Kish, Dave, you absolute beauty, all my favorite members here on the channel. Thank you guys so much for being in here. John Rossi, how you doing? Yoshinobu Yamamoto, I'm not going to sit here and explain everything about the guy. I feel like we all know who he is at this point. If you don't, please check out previous content regarding him. I've talked about him, it feels like, every single week since the offseason has begun. I'm sure that's, in fact, the truth. Yamamoto, though, is truly a unicorn. A lot of teams like him, and I'm going to be frank with you all. While the Mets absolutely want Yoshinobu Yamamoto, there is a very real possibility that they do not land him for factors that they can't control, as I've emphasized already with the Yankees connection, idolizing the Yanks growing up. Cashman loves the guy. He's drooling over him left and right. And on top of that, Andy Martino saying that the Yanks have kept number 18 for him because that is the quote-unquote ace number in Japan. Wow, congratulations on saving a number. Truly, that's going to be the X factor. It's hilarious to me. For that reason alone, I pray that if the Mets do not land Yamamoto, that his ass goes to Boston and he is going to be dominating against the Yanks and against Cashman. I have no issue if Boston's going to get Yamamoto. If the Mets don't land him, that's probably one of the few teams where I would not only be content with, but excited to still watch Yamamoto on, an every fifth day basis. I really want to be locked in on this guy, regardless of where he lands. But naturally, if it's not with the Mets, I'd say with the Yanks. If it's, say, with, God forbid, the Phillies, the Braves, the Dodgers, teams that I certainly despise, there's a lack of interest there, regardless of the talent that is Yoshi. And thank you so much for the donation, Yoshima. Really appreciate that with the $2 holla. Montgomery and Shota are a great plan B. Thank you for the donation as well. Really does mean a lot. No matter how big the market is, says Josh, it was clear that NYM can't buy themselves a chip, and that's why they are rebuilding now. I think they are just rebuilding and bring their payroll back down. Josh, that is not the case whatsoever, my friend. It just sounds like you're a little ill-informed, and I don't mean that as an insult. I truly mean it as if you've been following along day to day for the past 5 months, then you would understand that they are not in a rebuild whatsoever right now. They have a payroll of 270 plus million before making any more moves this offseason, and that's not going to stop. The luxury tax is going to kick their butt. It is not going to double the way that Ken Rosenthal had the audacity to say. He's not known for being a mathematician. Of course, he's just known for being a really good beat reporter. Spoke on Foul Territory today and said, how that's something where, given the luxury tax and the Mets being basically doubled what the salary is because of this, that he doesn't really know, and he of course could be proven wrong because Steve Cohen is willing to spend always, and the Mets are going to a degree be more wary of their spending, obviously, but nothing is going to prohibit them from going all in on players that they want to go all in on. Yamamoto is that exception. Jordan Montgomery is certainly that exception. Shohei Ohtani is that exception, and the list goes on from there and so forth. So, yeah, to anyone that thinks that the Mets are in a rebuild right now, you're not paying attention. They have a lot of holes that they need to fill. They need to round out that rotation. They need to fill out the bullpen. They need to add more offense and defense to the club, but they're going to do everything in their power to try to right this ship and have not only a competitive team, but a very competitive team for this 2024 season and beyond. Source, trust me, bro. That's fine. But we know about Yamamoto, Jordan Montgomery. Please make sure to check out that video earlier today in case you guys haven't already. It's so hilarious. I literally was going to record a video on Monty. I did the thumbnail and everything last night because we saw the Jeff Passan article in which he had his prediction, basically, Mets signing Montgomery is the perfect transaction, as he believed is the case with the Chicago Cubs signing Shohei Ohtani and with the Boston Red Sox signing Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I'm going to go on a limb right now and say that, personally, I think that Yamamoto's likelihood of landing in Queens is greater than Boston, even though I can't sit here and say that's anything more than just my personal assumption and belief. And that is in part because of Jordan Montgomery and where he's currently residing. If you guys watched the video today, but I'll reiterate it once more in case you haven't. Monty's living in Boston now. The guy moved to Boston this winter to kind of help his wife, who has a career path over there now, in which the specifics I don't have off the top of my head right now, but he recently just moved to Boston, so he's getting a complete feel of what it's like to be in Boston, which, might add, is fantastic. Had a great experience in my first and only time in Boston with the 7 Line 2 seasons ago. Just a phenomenal area. I had a lot of fun being there, so I can understand the appeal, to say the least. But Monty's already living in Boston, and the first reported target the Boston Red Sox had this offseason was, in fact, Jordan Montgomery. So if we're just looking at the writing on the wall, there's more reasons than not to believe that Montgomery could easily find himself landing in Boston, but nothing is a guarantee whatsoever. But just something to keep in mind when evaluating the two, because while us Mets fans would love a perfect world by signing both Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Jordan Montgomery, I would be lying if I said that I expect that to happen. I do not. And I think the Mets will be grateful if they can just land one of the two, with, of course, Yamamoto being in a tier of himself. Here's Yamamoto, then there's a bit of a gap, then you have Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, Shota Imanaga, Eduardo Rodriguez, and then everything else from there, right? So that's kind of how I feel personally about that. I'm curious how you guys feel regarding not only the likes of Yamamoto, but Montgomery. Is Monty a plan B situation? I don't know if he's necessarily a plan B situation if we take acknowledgement of the Mets' recent interest in starting pitchers in previous free agencies. If the Kevin Gausman, Max Scherzer back and forth from 2 off seasons ago was telling of anything, is that the Mets do have a willingness to go out and spend top dollar on starting pitchers when they feel it is worthy. And if you look at what the biggest team need is for this team, it is 1,000% to round out this rotation. Yes, your bullpen's in shambles, but relievers are easier to come by and kind of finding diamonds in the rough, not having to pay for frontline guys all the time, versus starting pitchers. That's a little bit of a trickier situation for a team that is certainly trying to compete heavily for the 2024 season. So when you look at all these factors, you come to the realization that yes, starting pitching is without question the Mets' #1 goal this offseason. So if they do not land a Yamamoto, if they do not land a Monty, if they do not even land, Shota Imanaga, Eduardo Rodriguez, it's hard to view this offseason as anything besides being a failure, because that's what it would be. And they're going to make their moves. I'm very confident the Mets are going to have some nice splashes this offseason. It's also, I'm not going to lie, a little refreshing that things have been hush-hush to this point. I understand that there are fans out there that, really want moves and fast, but the offseason, before you know it, it'll happen quick. And then there's a dry spell as you get closer to spring training where there isn't too much to talk about and too much to get into. And I don't hate the fact that things have been pretty hush-hush with the Mets at this point. And it wouldn't shock me if they are fairly hush-hush until the end of the week, getting into the weekend, because winter meetings officially begin next week. And that's where I think all hell is going to break loose, is when it really feels like everything that's bottled up is going to start to be exposed. But David Stearns, give a lot of credit. He's kept things hush-hush thus far, and I like that. I really do. And I've heard a lot regarding Shohei Ohtani in particular. We can just hop right to the Ohtani sweepstakes. We know the Blue Jays are really in. We know the Red Sox are in. And we know the Dodgers are heavily in. We know the Yanks have a level of interest. We know the San Francisco Giants are determined to land at least one of, if not both of, Yamamoto and Ohtani, same way the Dodgers feel that way. A lot of people want these guys, but where are they going to find themselves at the end of the day is a great question. And Ohtani is someone that I don't think we should write off whatsoever, knowing that he's trying to keep things as hush-hush as possible, his agency, all that stuff. There's a reason he didn't even speak to the media when he won his recent awards, when he won unanimous MVP. He was supposed to do an interview, a little presser that night. It got canceled. So the question mark surrounding Shohei Ohtani has only grown bigger, even though that there has been belief that Ohtani will sign potentially before even winter meetings begin. So we could find out where Ohtani lands in the next week or so. It might be 2 weeks, but rest assured the Mets are involved in that market. They do have interest. They've had interest for a long period of time. Whether they view him as a top priority or not is a different question. And that is something where we will find out as the offseason goes along. Guys, I also want to know, everyone watching live and I'll replay, how's the audio sounding? Does everything sound okay? Does everything sound stupid? Let me know how you're feeling on the audio front. Wow, my mouse just decided to die on me. Thank you, Logitech. That's fantastic, even though it's probably just a bad battery. Thankfully, my computer is touchscreen, so I can swipe and go through the live chat that way. Wardy, what up? I'm one of those fans. What's up, Ricky? I know you, my man. Happy to have you in here, brother. Why are people worried about the Mets retiring Strawberries number 18? I haven't seen one person worried about that, so if anyone is, they're silly. But that's just common sense, I feel like. It shouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if that's a silly thing or not. But We talked about Shohei, we talked about Monty, we talked about Yamamoto, all guys we would love to see in Queens. If the Mets land one of them this offseason, I think we'll all be very happy, right? Of course, we would love Ohtani or Yamamoto before Montgomery, but I feel like a lot of fans, after seeing Montgomery's continued consistent success there in the Bronx across town, makes it appealing, especially after the great run he had this year, a career high in innings pitched. Of course, it was a walk year, so that helps incentivize him. But going from the Cardinals to the Rangers mid-season and doing fantastic in Texas, if he doesn't return and the Mets do land Monty, I'm not going to be complaining. He's one of those few exceptions where I think, given his type of pitch style and pitch mix, can project well, because he's not known for having overwhelming life on the fastball. He's known for those off-speed pitches. He's known for the slide piece, right? And those are guys that you can expect to project well as they get into their mid-30s, like a Jose Quintana as a great example. Plenty of similarities between the two as well, and I'm sure that is in part why the Mets have interest, because Quintana really impressed in his fairly small sample size coming back from injury this year with the New York Metropolitans in his debut season. But Shota Imanaga was officially posted today from the MPB. Imanaga, the Mets have scouted over the past number of months. He is one of many starting pitching options on their radar. To what degree, we do not know at this current time. We'll discuss it when the time is right, should we find out more information. I'm sure we will. Shota, who had around a career 3 ERA or so there in the MPB, a southpaw, who again is not known for the overwhelming life on the fastball, but known for those creative off-speed pitches, gets a nice swing and miss rate. Walk rate is pretty solid. There are plenty to like about Shota Imanaga, and he is projected to get a Kodai Senga-esque contract this MLB offseason. So why is that appealing for a Mets team? Well, they just signed Kodai Senga to his contract over the past year, and he was a Cy Young caliber pitcher in his rookie year. If Shota Imanaga is going to have success at the MLB level right away, it is easy to see him doing that in Queens, not only because of the fact that you're in Flushing, Queens, and that is the largest area around when it comes to people that are like-minded because of their descent, whether they're Japanese or whether they are any type, you know what I'm saying, right? So I think that is definitely a nice factor in the Mets' favor. Kodai Senga's success and Jeremy Hefner's success working with him is appealing, and as long as Shota doesn't have this hierarchy status, which some players do, where they don't want to play with a fellow countryman on their club, then that is a world where we could easily see the Mets involved, especially if they say lose out on Yamamoto because of reasons that they can't control. But one thing I do want to touch on with Yamamoto, just for a brief second, everybody, is the following. Shoyo, what is going on here? Yamamoto is going to cost more than just the fee, because you have to deal with the posting fee. So if you're spending $200+ million on him, you're spending additional millions that you have to give to his club in the MPB because they allowed him to be posted at the major league level. So you have to pay that fee, as was the case with many guys that we've seen in years past coming over from the MPB. So he's not going to be cheap. He's going to be one of the highest paid players in all of baseball when he has yet to pitch a game at major league level, which again, you can understand the rightful concerns and risk with, but there's talks that this guy might win the Cy Young in his first year. And if Kodai Senga can get Cy Young votes, I'm going to go on a limb and say as long as he can stay healthy, Yamamoto will certainly get those too, wherever he ends up landing. But we talk about Shota Yariel Rodriguez, another pitcher. This is more of a swingman type. He gives me like a Trevor William type vibe. He was definitely standing out as a starting pitcher throughout 2 starts there in the WBC for Team Cuba. Since then, he has spent the entire year in the Dominican Republic training, getting ramped up, and waiting to be made available from his club over in the MPB to then be parted with to be available in this year's free agency. Now, Yariel Rodriguez was a reliever in the MPB prior to this past season, which he had plenty of success, has nice life on that fastball. I like the breaking pitches with him too. Pretty concise and compact. He gives me a little bit of Taijuan Walker vibes just in his build, his stature, and there are aspects of Yariel that I like that the Mets have scouted as well. I don't know to what degree the interest the Mets have at this time, but that too is another pitcher that we'll follow on with should there be further connection throughout this MLB offseason. Let me make sure that I don't miss any donations here. Again, shout out every single one of you guys watching the live show live on our replay. It is greatly appreciated. So that's great. So I went from my mouse not working to, okay, my entire screen froze. So what I'm going to do, we're going to improvise here, and we're going to throw this up. I'm going to just put the live chat on my phone or beside me, and I'll be good. And I don't know where we're on the like count, but we do have over 500 concurrent viewers. Continue smashing that like and subscribe on. And we get to 200 plus likes by the end of the live show prior to going on replay, we greatly appreciate it. And thank you all so much in advance. Let's see. What happened to Believe in Queens? Thank you so much for that donation. I think now is a good time that we can expand on a little bit further. As many of you know, I've had the privilege of doing a podcast with Anthony Recker, former Met turned MLB Network analyst, and Joe Serrallo. Joe does a great job in his own right, covering sports in various ways, especially in the betting space. So what happened, unfortunately, this year is we rebranded into Queen's Corner Podcast after we parted ways with Believe Network, and that was perfectly fine and good. As the Mets season took a downturn, unfortunately, so did our availability in the process. Joe at the time, and still is, I'm pretty sure, working multiple jobs because he was no longer working with Believe Network. Rec is always busy, as is, because he's not only working with MLB Network, he also works for Dell, and he has a family with 3 little kiddos to work with. So he's full-time, always busy. I'm not going to close the door on the podcast sparking up again. However, where we are currently at, we're not in a position where we can expect consistent live shows from the Queen's Corner podcast. So the pod I'm planning to continue, especially as we get into the regular season, is I want to have a show that's a nice transition of recapping series, previewing upcoming ones, and all, and just having a dynamic with others is great. Joe and Record, people that I do intend on having back on the channel, but given the current circumstances, we're just not in a position where we're able to all be on the same page and all be available at the same time, just given our respective schedules, is what it came down to, which sucks because we all thoroughly enjoy our conversations together. We all have great friendship. We're still in contact with each other without a problem. Just a current situation where the availability just isn't there at this point in time. It's a bummer, but unfortunately that is the reality of the situation. Great question though. Appreciate that donation. Thank you so much. Let's see here. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything else. Okay, now let's get into, we talked about those guys, and I don't want to spend too much longer on the free agent part because I want to get into trade topics. I want to have this be around 45, 50 plus minute show without really being long-winded here. So let's get into the rumored guys in the free agent front. And that consists of Teoscar Hernandez, Adam Duvall, Jorge Soler, JD Martinez, and Justin Turner. Starting with Teoscar Hernandez, be on the lookout. I plan to discuss him in a further video in the near future because there are certain aspects about his game that I not only like, but I think make a lot of sense for the Mets more than I initially thought that I want to expand on. So don't be shocked if you see me talking about Teo individually as soon as this week even. Teoscar, of course, had a fairly underwhelming year in his first year and a likely only year with the Mariners, having, over 20 home runs, 90 plus RBIs or so, but a 740 OPS, around a 250 average, at best an average defender in the corner. But what is so appealing about Teoscar Hernandez and why it wouldn't shock me if the Mets are not only involved in his market but end up landing him is that power ability, the ability to still give you competent defense in the corner. The Mets certainly need help in that regard, given their lack of outfielders at the moment. And someone that, even if he does project more in that DH role years going forward, can be utilized in that spot and finally have more power protection outside of Alonso and Francisco Lindor. Mets certainly need power. This is a broken record, and Teo can certainly bring that. And if you can get a little bit more consistency in his game, I think you could argue that this is someone that could easily come in and hit you 30 plus bombs a year for you at his absolute best. And he's coming off of a fairly down year with his overall production because he started the season horribly, but really picked it up and had himself a strong second half. But knowing where his current value's at, you can argue that now might be the time to buy in on Teoscar Hernandez versus if he had an awesome baller year, then he would have very well could be out of the range of what the Mets interest level is. Instead of it, say, being a 4-year, $80 million projected deal, it could have been 5 years, 120. It could be 6 years, etc. Like, the list goes on and on. If Teo had a better season than what he had, and he's someone that, given that power potential, I think that there is something to be had there with him, wherever he may land. So we talked about Teoscar Hernandez, Adam Duvall. Duvall, of course, had 20 bombs or so and not even 100 games because he broke his wrist early on with Boston this year. Billy Epler did everything he could to land Duvall last offseason, but he signed with Boston because it was a more guaranteed role versus what he would be getting currently here with the Mets in that more platoon role, which is why the Mets ended up signing Tommy Pham, which turned out to be one of their best hitters up until he was parted with, which is crazy how that all turned out. But Adam Big swing and miss guy, not known for the average, not known for the OBP, but the slug is ridiculous. And as long as Duvall can stay healthy, which is a tall task for him as he's now 35, he's not getting any younger. The power is there, though. If the Mets are looking for a platoon type option in left field DH, that is a short-term option because they want to keep, say, more available options for either via trade, leading up to the trade deadline, or whatever it may be. Duvall comes into play, and he's still a very solid defender. Playing left, can play in center, can play in right. He can be utilized all over the place. And a David Stearns that wants to upgrade defense, this is how you do it while also gaining power at the same time. So those are the appeals with Adam Duvall. Jorge Soler, the guy absolutely rakes. Had north of 40 home runs this past year, 80 plus RBIs, or close to. Very productive season for Jorge Soler. Another guy that has struggled to stay healthy at times. Big swing and miss, lots of strikeouts, and poor defense in the corner. But man, oh man, is he one of the better DHs in baseball when he is healthy and he is right. Jorge Soler is not someone that's expected to get a ridiculous contract. Nothing that's out of the realm of possibility for the Mets. But I think the biggest question with him is, how much interest level do the Mets have in landing a guy that is a net negative defensively? And while he brings plenty power protection, you would have to sign him on a multi-year deal. Is that something that the Mets have interest in as well, given his current market? That's something that we have yet to find out. JD Martinez, phenomenal year there with the Dodgers, right around like a 900 or so OPS, if not higher, 33 home runs, over 100 RBIs. Is he going to do that again this upcoming season, especially if he ends up landing in Queens? That's a great question mark. And as much as I respect and love JD Martinez, I think he has been one of the most slept on sluggers in baseball for the past decade. It's not even close. Like, this guy has been consistently an absolute beauty with the bat. Of course, is a standalone DH, and that standalone DH aspect, again, I'm wondering from the Mets perspective, what is the interest level there? I don't know if they have that interest level. They may. We will find out. But he is another one. While the Mets have had their interest in the past, he is known for back issues, and the Dodgers do a fantastic job on bringing in grizzled vets that maybe you thought were going to start to become a has-been into still being relevant, as he did not only with JD Martinez, but also to a degree with Jason Hayward, who they just re-signed to another one-year deal. I mean, the Dodgers do such a great job of player development and just analyzing from their coaching staff, both balancing the analytics and the eye test, and they've done great things with JD Martinez, and JD's someone who, of course, I'd be excited about because of that power potential, but I would also be nervous about his age and just the complete lack of defensive upside is why I could see it not being appealing for a David Stern ran Mets. Let's see, 2 years in a row. Soler could be good. Exactly. He could be. But again, these are things that we have to weigh as fans because they go beyond, of course, what is happening with amongst us fans. You know, like what is happening behind the scenes could be quite different than what we're talking about right now. And that's also what's exciting about the MLB offseason. But last but not least, on the more higher profile names that have either been connected to the Mets one way or the other, we have Justin Turner. Justin Turner had himself another ridiculous year in his first and final year, most likely, there in Boston. Now, Turner is someone where, yes, some fans love the idea of a Turner reunion, have been saying it for years. The Mets have been connected to Turner, feels like every year since they parted with him, and he became truly one of the best third basemen in the game when looking at his bat in particular. Not as much known for the defense as he's known for that plus bat. He played all over the infield this year for the Red Sox. Again, not great defense whatsoever. He profiles best as DH, but still can give you 25 home runs, can give you 90 plus RBIs, hitting for high contact, hitting for 800 or so OPS. There's still lots to like about Justin Turner, but he did just turn 39 on Thanksgiving. And while that bat-to-ball skills are still there, his bat speed is ridiculous at his age, one catching up to velo. Second half of the year in Boston was remarkable, one of the best hitters in the game. But the issue, again, he's not getting any younger. His defense is only going to continue to get worse. And while he can make sense as a short-term option, should that be the route that the Mets want to go down to finally have more production in that spot, again, I don't hate that idea. Is that still the route that is exactly the Mets want to do right now? We do not know to this point. So just keep in mind all these players that it shouldn't come too shocking should the Mets land multiple of these guys, especially when we look at the starting pitching market. Luis Severino, I basically skipped on because we've talked about Sevy already. I'm okay and I'm content if the Mets land him as, say, a number 5 option there. Even if they have a 6-man rotation, should they land Yamamoto, I like that idea too. But Sevy's definitely not a guy that I'm going out of my way to break my back for and trying to land, given the other options out there, even with the lack of depth that's currently in the free agent starting pitching market. Sevy still has some nice stuff, struggled mightily this past year with a north of 7 ERA and 20 starts, but has struggled to stay healthy. And you have to wonder what his medicals, where they currently stand, 1, and 2, I can understand the appeal with him wanting to stay in New York, but this time going to Queens, rekindling that relationship with Carlos Mendoza. But is he a priority? I think Severino is a guy that, at best, should be competing towards the tail end of the rotation. He's not someone I want to see as the Mets number 3 next year at this current rate for obvious reasons. So we talked about the free agents. Before I wrap up that free agent discussion, if you guys have any specific questions, comments, and concerns on the free agent market aspect, please let me know now before we divulge into the trade aspect of tonight's show. And again, guys, if you enjoy the coverage of what we're doing here, again, we're going to be doing plenty more of this in the coming days. We will be back live with a very similarly formatted, probably another Free Agent Frenzy live show or latest news and rumors tomorrow with Michael Marino. We'll be sharing his input, who has done a great job as an independent reporter. And then Thursday, as of now, we will be doing our Bridging the Gap podcast, myself and Patrick Hennessy. Lots of new updates, not only for the Mets, but the Mets and Yanks battle for Yamamoto, the Yanks' interest level in a lot of certain players right now, hearing from his perspective, sharing my perspective on if the Yanks say Landon Bellinger, a Soto, or more recently, the interest in Jun-Ho Lee, to name a few. We're going to get into all that, along with consistent videos every single day throughout the week. So you got live shows, you got videos, you got everything is what you're getting. So let's see what you guys got here. Eduardo Rodriguez. Yes, the reason why I don't have Eduardo on the list is because, I really haven't even seen much rumors, with Eduardo Rodriguez and the Mets. Now, when discussing rumors, it's one of those things where it's like, what do you define as a rumor? And for me, I think a rumor especially is when there isn't any backed reporting. It's kind of just like, this guy fits the bill, he makes sense, so we're going to rumor that could be a potential fit. The same way when I discuss trade or free agent targets before they're officially connected to the Mets, some of them are never even fully connected to the Mets, because I personally, as a fan and a content creator, just putting 2 and 2 together, understanding what the Mets' current vision is, what's reportedly known, and kind of figuring out, piecing together, okay, if the Mets want to go long-term in this area, these guys make sense. If they want to go short-term, these guys make sense. And then you go on from there. So let me see if I can address a couple comments before we transition into, obviously, trade talk. I'd be in a coma on a previous... Wait. I don't know what you just said there, but okay. Shota Imanaga, the Mets, definitely not opposed to, that's for sure. K-Swiss, missed my earlier dono. I'm so sorry if I did that. K-Swiss is because of the fact that, unfortunately... my computer mouse died and I'm not able to scroll up in the chat. K-Swiss, can you do me a favor and just tell me, 1, how much you donated, and 2, what your question was? Can you just repeat in the live chat and I'll gladly get to that for you? Don't need to donate again. Please don't do that. I remember you exactly because I know that you were a giveaway winner on the channel. Hope you were doing well, my friend. Glasson will be Mets ace for 2024. I don't expect that to happen, if I'm being quite honest with you, but we'll see, because we're going to get into Glass now here shortly. But yeah, K-Swiss, whatever you donate, please let me know so that way I can respond to you accordingly. Brandon Woodruff. Yes, Brandon Woodruff. Love the idea of taking a flyer on him on a 2-year deal, especially if he, once he comes back and is healthy and is back to the old Brandon Woodruff. But there are a lot of concerns with Woodruff. The fact that the guy didn't even have feeling in his hands, in his fingers at times because of his injuries is not okay. The fact that he's dealing with significant shoulder injury right now versus it being just a TJ is very concerning. Shoulder injuries are much harder to come back from naturally for starting pitchers usually than Tommy John, elbow-related things. So I don't know what's going to happen with Brandon Woodruff. He does make a lot of sense for the Mets to take a flyer on him, for him to rehab over this next year and then have him ready for 2025, should he not be available at all in 2024. But is not a guy by any means I think is a lock to land here right now. Just another name that is in that mix that has plenty of work to do to see if he can get back to his original self, which is a Cy Young caliber pitcher when he's healthy. Brandon Woodruff is an unbelievable talent, to say the least. But yeah, once more, K-Swiss, please make sure to let me know what your dono was so I can properly address it for you. But now let's get into the trade stuff because we don't have endless time here on the channel. So give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. We got the trade market. We got the trade targets available for you. As you see, report. Okay, so this The chat may have finally... Oh, $2. Thoughts on Mets hiring Scott Havens to run baseball operations? Great question. The only reason why I didn't really haven't discussed Scott Havens is because there's really not more to elaborate on. He's going to run business ops, and that's like completely out of the realm of anything having to do with like the club itself. Like that's separate from normal typical front office and things of that nature. You know, all things that us fans should stay in tune on. That is just completely business related and things that, you know, most fans are never going to be really paying close attention to. Not, I shouldn't say most, but there's a large contingency of fans who didn't even know that Mets had a role there until now. So I really don't have much to say on Scott aside from the fact that he's coming over from Bloomberg, and you know there's plenty of money involved there. That's really all I got for you at the moment. Is it not the type of front office update like a Chris Gross for amateur scouting or Andy Green for player development? It's a completely different area, and that is why I'm not going to elaborate too much. Jose Barrios, yes, people are like, what? Jose Barrios, great question. Now, the reason why we have Jose Barrios on the trade target as a rumor is because there have been rumblings coming out. It's sent my way today, as a matter of fact, of Jose Barrios, according to some Hispanic reports I've seen that I need to translate into, believe that he very well could not only be a trade chip this offseason, but that the Mets could be a likely destination given their desperate need for starting pitching. Now, I do not foresee this happening at this current juncture. It's very premature, but Barrios is a very interesting one who had a nice bounce back season after prior, you know, had his struggles in 2022 with the Toronto Blue Jays. Had around a 3.6 ERA or so there in Toronto this year. The Blue Jays, though, it's like for them, why would they want to trade Barrios aside from freeing up that money and maybe you want to utilize it elsewhere? And for the Mets, you know, what are the type of assets that they would give up in a situation like that? It's a great question mark. Again, that is not something that I really foresee happening until proven otherwise. So should we find out further reporting on the Barrios front, then of course we will elaborate and discuss those when it is deemed best fit. How trustworthy is Hector Gomez? I would put him in trustworthy category. It's hard to say. You can say Bob Nightingale, because Bob's been wrong plenty, but he has been right plenty too. You could throw in Jim Bowden, in which Jim, I think, says a lot, but nothing that really materializes too much. Again, a great baseball mind, does a good job with The Athletic and his own independent reporting, but still not one where he's known to be breaking news much. Hector is very interesting because he'll have just a hot streak of getting like 3-4 things in a row right, and then he'll have a complete cold streak of having nothing right whatsoever. And I think it's just more so his willingness to report kind of anything that he hears. I don't think he has the same level of kind of like stubbornness on like what you're willing and what you're not willing to share based on hearsay, what you find out from others. I think for him, he's just one of those that as soon as he finds out intel, anyone that is even a sliver of having credibility, he will then throw out there, which is why Juan Soto, while the Mets certainly have interest there, that's always been common knowledge. The report that came out yesterday is why we did that video breakdown on. Please make sure to check it out if you haven't already, folks. That's a different situation in itself because, again, you're hoping to see more connections beyond a Hector Gomez in that situation. As he noted, both the Mets and the Giants are involved in trade talks on that front, as are the Yankees, but still a situation where I think it's the Yankees to beat at this rate for Juan Soto until we find out to believe otherwise. So, Juan, I don't think I need to expand on too much. If the Mets really do take this seriously, do everything in your power to land him, I'm very much in favor of that. I understand the risk involved, given that he's a rental, but it's really hard to see a world where the Mets will go out of their way, give up key assets for Juan Soto, and not be able to extend him, even with him being a Scott Boras client, even with him looking for $400 to $500+ million. Steve Cohen, if he's trained for him, he's doing exactly that, the same way that as soon as he traded for Francisco Lindor, made sure, even though negotiations went well into the final hour before the 2021 regular season began, they locked Lindor down for that decade plus. And I would even go a step further if, say, the Mets or Yankees do land Soto this offseason. An extension, we're looking over 10 years because he's only 25. I think there's a very real possibility you could see Juan Soto on a 13 to 15 year contract. I know it's crazy, but it really isn't all that shocking when you think of the Fernando Tatises, etc. Given his age, given his value, and the ability to maybe either have certain deferred money or lessen the blown AAV by a certain time frame. And of course, maybe having some interesting opt-outs should you wish, or just making sure that if he plays this amount of games and, he's going to lock in for this, whatever it may be. That is a really interesting one that we're going to be following along to a T this MLB offseason. Said they've been holding it for, let's see. Dominic, great member, says it's been said they have been holding it for him over a year now. What are you talking about? The number for the A? Who gives a shit? That's my response to that. If that's gonna be an X factor, then we'll discuss and be like, damn, the Yanks really got Yamamoto because that number 18 was the X factor. It'll obviously be more factors than just that, but it's interesting. It is definitely interesting to say the least. Let's see. Don't mess with D-Lobs, desperate for attention. It's Mets talk. I don't know what's happening there, but hopefully everything's fine. Now let's get into, we talk about Soto, Manuel, Margot. I'm not going to really expand on much. More of a contact hitter, a guy that doesn't get on base on a crazy clip or anything like that, doesn't slug well at all, hits for solid contact, can play in the corner without a problem. That is a guy where if you acquire him, he should be utilized as a platoon at absolute most. I have heard, though, that the Mets were close to landing Margot prior to the Rule 5 draft cutoff for teams by that deadline to have them available for the Rule 5 draft, which of course is in December. The Mets do like Manuel Margot, but it's like, are you really going to trade for a guy that's owed $10 million this offseason and not inquire at minimum a Tyler Glasnow in the process? I think it just makes far more sense to do that. Glasnow is coming off of a career high season in innings pitched, but it was a measly 120 or so. Glasnow has yet to show consistency with his health in his career. While don't get me wrong, the guy looks like an absolute beauty. He's literally Killian Murphy, but a foot taller, with stud hair, looks like an absolute gem, and throws absolute gems all the time. Great personality too, but still someone where you have a lot of concerns with the health factor, trading assets to the Rays, of course, and knowing that he's a rental. There are things to be concerned about in the Glasnow front while also being optimistic at the same time. Dylan Cease, similarly, again, Cease has been relatively healthy, but still had a struggle in the second half of the season quite a bit after looking fantastic leading up to the MLB trade deadline. The White Sox made a great mistake by not trading him away, and that value is not going to be what it once was. Good evening, Kevin. Happy to have you in here, my friend, as we're breaking down all the latest in Mets land for this free agent frenzy show, breaking down all the free agent targets currently for the Mets, as well as their trade targets, and we'll be repeating ourselves and expanding a lot on this plenty throughout the week and all offseason long. You're going to hear a lot of repetition from me, but naturally that's the case when we're still waiting to find out more news on guys, and people just love to have these discussions. Offseason is such a fun time. It can get watered down quick. It can get annoying at times when you're talking about stuff and nothing ever materializes. It takes too long, but it's always still a great discussion, and I have an absolute blast doing it every single time. Cease, I love his arsenal. I'm not overly concerned with the downtick in velo and the horizontal break in the slider. There's a lot to like about Dylan Cease. Phenomenal season 2022, even though that was more of an outlier year. Just when he's right, commands the strike zone beautifully, has one of the best curveballs in baseball. Heater when right is disgusting. Dylan Cease is on the Chicago White Sox, so of course he's a huge trade chip, and the Atlanta Braves and the LA Dodgers are among teams actively in that market. Mets are not actively in that market reportedly, but they are a rumored connection because of course the Mets need starting pitching, and Cease isn't a rental, which can make him a bit more appealing for a Mets team that's focusing beyond the 2024 season. He will be a free agent 2 years from now, not one at this current rate. Corbin Burns, though, similarly to Tyler Glasnow, is a rental after this upcoming season. He is a rental, so he will be a free agent after the 2024 season. Burns, Cy Young Award winner this past year, plus just a phenomenal pitcher in his own right. But the Brewers, they have a stubbornness on a lack of willingness to trade away these assets, especially guys that are even in their walk years. I don't foresee Burns being dealt this offseason at this rate. I think if it does happen, it'll be around the trade deadline, should the Brewers not be in a position to have success. I think that they still will. I think Burns, if he's done it in Milwaukee, it'll ultimately come down to next offseason when he hits the free agent market. That just makes a lot of sense for both sides there, I feel like. But certainly, if he is available, David Stearns knows him better than any other front office exec not in the Milwaukee Brewers organization. So that's where you have to look at it and say, hey, this could be a really great fit. Yes, you have to give up an arm and a leg for him, but as long as you extend him, this can easily be your potentially co-ace with a Kodai Senga, a Yamamoto, a Monty for the next number of years to come. So We love Corbin Burnes, uber talented pitcher, but not a guy by any stretch as a lock to be traded this offseason. Same goes with Freddie Peralta, who has more control in his contract. Of course, he's not a rental of the way that his teammate Burnes is. Peralta coming off a very solid campaign there in Milwaukee. Just a nice, really solid middle of the pack starter that would not hurt as your number 3, number 4 whatsoever. He will be more costly, I'd imagine, because he has more team control in his contract, but certainly someone that the Mets were able to land. There's a lot of upside there. And if you're going to commit to give up assets for starting pitching, I am personally in more favor of going after guys with more than just 1 year of control, because at the end of the day, while we can sit here and assume that an extension can be put in place, nothing is a guarantee. We have learned that far too many times as fans. So Peralta is another guy to be keeping an eye on. And Ricky, thank you so much for the kind words. It's greatly appreciated. Appreciate everyone chiming in, guys. We are going to be wrapping up the show within the next 5 to 10 minutes, but I do want to get through the rest of these players here and, of course, answer a couple more comments if I can. Again, happy to have you on here. Do I think the Mets trade Marte? No, I do not see the Mets trade Marte this offseason. I think that contract is way too hard to part with at the moment, and the Mets are going to just have to bite the bullet and hope that Marte can be as healthy as possible and be productive as well heading into next season. Yes, that is Devin Williams that we'll get into shortly. Jose Barrios, we talked about him a little bit. Luis Robert, one of my favorite players in all of baseball that is not on the Mets. Talked about him in my top 5 Mets trade targets video. Robert will literally cost everyone and your mother and your father and your sister and your brother to acquire. But if you land Luis Robert, you land one of the best 5-tool players in baseball, a guy that can easily hit you 30 to 40 home runs a year, 100 RBI potential, 20 plus stolen bags, hitting for high average, hitting for 850 to 1,000 OPS. So much to love about Luis Robert. A phenomenal outfielder and center there with the White Sox on the south side. A phenomenal bat, and a guy where if the White Sox are really trying to get a jump start on this rebuild, they should trade away their biggest asset in Robert. That is exactly what they should do versus being silly and holding on to him until, say, his rental year or something, when you could have sped up your rebuild process so much faster for a club that's in complete turmoil at the moment because they have a complete incompetent owner at the very top. Shout out to you, Jerry, for being an absolute piece of shit. I'm sorry. I got to be blunt there. He's garbage. He's horrendous. Literally, they had so much talent over the past 4 years there in Chicago, and they've done nothing with it. Nothing. Made horrendous coaching hires, horrendous medical staff, horrendous attitude in the clubhouse. No one gives a shit there. And Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito, all these guys will be the first to tell you that. It's really, really ridiculous, in my opinion. Your thoughts on untouchable prospects for you? Mine would be, I don't think any prospect is untouchable for the Mets if we're talking about star talents with multiple years of control. For Luis Robert, I'm giving up everything for him. Everything that isn't Francisco Alvarez. The farm, I 100% think it would be worthwhile. If you're going, I understand the lack of interest from Mets fans to want to give up the farm, finalize your strike and build it, which is why there's a great likelihood this move doesn't happen right now. But Robert is one of those exceptions. Multiple years of control, unbelievably talented player, 5-tool guy, ridiculous talent. You do everything in your power to land him should he be available. That is one of those exceptions. Not named Francisco Alvarez. Everyone else, I think, is on the table for that, and for good reason. But if we're talking about untouchables regarding, especially, say, like rentals, even a Juan Soto, for example, you can make the argument. I think Jet Williams is close to falling in that category. Absolutely. I think Ronald Acuna Jr. is definitely a guy the Mets would not like to part with. Drew Gilbert as well. Ryan Clifford, I think, has more expendability behind him currently at this rate. But that's really it. I think Kevin Parada is expendable. I think there's many guys in this farm that are expendable at the right price. I'd like to make that clear. I'm not in favor of trading away free agents, trading away prospects just for the sake of trading them away. And it needs to be worthwhile. It needs to make sense for the club, especially for their long-term vision. Otherwise, it's hard to love the idea. It really is. But we talked about him. Eloy Jimenez, absolute stud of a DH when healthy with the White Sox. Huge power bat, again, as long as he can stay on the field and stay healthy. Of course, not a defensive upside at all in the corner, more of a standalone DH, but young, lots of upside, plenty of control. If you're looking for a guy that could be your number 1 DH on a daily basis, rake against lefties as well, Eloy Jimenez comes into play, and he will not cost you nearly to the degree Luis Robert would certainly cost you via trade. Definitely another name to keep an eye on as the White Sox are in turmoil. Then we get on, wait, the Mets got Ronald Acuna? No, Luis Angel Acuna. All right, my mistake. What the effing do? I called him his brother's name. Hopefully he can live up to the brother potential in any way. If he does, then the Mets have themselves a phenomenal talent on their hands. But Alex Bregman, we've heard rumblings as of late saying that he may be available this offseason. It's hard for me to buy that. I don't think Breggy's going anywhere. I really don't. And I'll even go a step further right now. While Bregman is very appealing, and I can understand the Mets fans, including myself, the interest in him, he's someone where I can very easily see him already hitting his peak in Houston. If he stays in Houston, still putting up very respectable numbers, but if he goes elsewhere, I think there's a lot of concern. Bregman's splits, depending on where he plays, are drastic with his power, and at Mets City Field, while it's not the worst park by any stretch for offense, it's a pitcher's park there, right? And that's something to keep in mind when evaluating someone like Bregman and giving up those key assets for another guy that, isn't going to be around potentially more than just a year. There's a lot of risk involved there. But given the championship pedigree, given how great he's been in the hot corner for all these years in Houston, it is certainly appealing in a way that Carlos Correa was so appealing this past offseason for the Mets, right? There's definitely an appeal with these Astro studs and the potential there. And Chris Gross, I'm sure, can speak glowingly on behalf of Bregman. And for those that don't know Chris Gross, he is the new Mets head pretty much of amateur scouting, which they pried away from the Houston Astros. That's a big deal. So final things we'll get into before we wrap things up. David Bednar, Garrett Crochet, Devin Williams, all stud relievers, all guys that have control on their contracts, all guys on teams that are big question marks. The Pirates have had Bednar in trade talks the past 2+ years, and if they're looking to get a nice return, now would probably be the time for David. Again, not going to be unbelievable, but definitely a respectable return the Pirates would be looking for. And now that the Mets don't have Billy Epler as GM, maybe they don't have to worry about giving up a pivotal asset for their pen in a trade again. Or just, it wouldn't be a pen-for-pen trade here, but you get what I'm saying, right? So I'm interested to see what will happen. David Bednar, again, one of the better relievers in baseball. Devin Williams, who has one of the nastiest changeups in the game. It's disgusting. Would love him as a setup man to Edwin Diaz. And I think that market in particular, given David Stearns and the understanding he has with Devin Williams throughout his long tenure there in Milwaukee, and as long as the Brewers don't act completely stubborn and say, hey, this isn't going to happen because we don't want to deal with you because you took Stearns away from us, then you absolutely have to do your best to try to land someone like him. Garrett Crochet is an absolute stud, flame-throwing southpaw. Mets do not have a southpaw like that in their pen whatsoever. And while maybe David Peterson could become that when he's back from his injury, Crochet's nasty. He's nasty. I've been a fan of his too for quite a bit now. They got some nice arms there in Chicago and guys that I would very much be in favor of should they land in Queens. And Jerry Blevins was the first to make note of these guys in particular. So I just want to give a little credit and shout there to Jerry, who does a fantastic job on SNY, whether it's on Mets Hot Stove or, their post-game shows. He has really done a phenomenal job there working with SNY. And on top of that was one of my favorite relievers during his time in Queens with the Mets, that crafty SOB, that lanky southpaw that just had nasty, and I mean nasty off-speed pitches. You'll love seeing the stuff from Jerry. But I think that's where I'm going to leave you guys with. So seriously, thank you all so much for the endless support. Worry, I did talk about Vladdy. I do intend on doing a video on him as well. I will let you know when that will be coming out. It could be as soon as tomorrow, could be a little bit later. Have to do my due diligence on the kiddo before I go and do a thorough breakdown on him. But again, I want to thank everyone so much for watching. We're going to get out here right before the hour mark. So if you enjoyed, please make sure to smash that like and subscribe on. It really does mean a lot. And stay tuned. We will be back live tomorrow, barring any changes, along with probably an individual video as well, possibly. So look out for a video and live stream again tomorrow. Really does mean a lot. Thursday, same thing applies. Friday, we'll have more content too. And of course, any type of breaking news, we will go live for right away. One thing I'm very humble and grateful for is that regardless on the amount of creators that we have in this space, we are consistently a top dog because of just how much we have so much fun reacting as fellow fans when these breaking news live shows happen. It literally means everything to me. I have so much fun doing them. I love answering all your comments, questions, and concerns. And I look forward to the rest of the content that we have rolling out this week. So again, thank you so much for the support. And as always,